here. All right, well, it's good to see you all here this morning. We've got a good crowd today. So we've been going through the life and ministry of Jesus in chronological order. And I think when we started this is the first time I'm talking here on this series. I think when we first started this, the plan was to be at, we're getting pretty close to Easter and be about that point in Jesus' story as well. But we're not there. That's okay. That's fine. We're about halfway there. We've had some delays and stuff like that. That's all right. Last week, Justin briefly mentioned the beheading of John the Baptist, which was Jesus' cousin. So, and this John's beheading happened at the request of Herod's wife, well, sort of wife, Herodias, who used to be Herod's brother's wife, and then I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I don't know if Herod's brother's was just kind of gone or what exactly was going on there. But that was one of the things John was calling out, saying, this is not right for you to have your brother's wife. And then Herodias instructed her daughter to ask for John the Baptist's head on a platter, which Herod obliged. It doesn't really seem like he necessarily wanted to, but that is what happened. But nonetheless, it's very clear that there were people who did not like John the Baptist and what he stood for, and go to great lengths to quiet him or murder him. And I think that would also probably sort of extend to Jesus. Just as much as some people were running to Jesus for healing and for these miracles, there were also people who were at the opposite end of the spectrum that were not quite as welcoming. And last week, Justin left us a point where Jesus sent out the disciples to preach that the kingdom of heaven is near, and they were given the power to drive out demons and heal the sick. And as a direct result of that, Jesus' popularity grew very quickly. They had 6 people or 6 groups going out instead of just one big group. Really got the word out. So much so that Jesus is now on Herod's radar. In Luke 9:7-9, it says, "Now Herod the Tetrarch heard about all that was going on. He was perplexed because some were saying this is John." He was saying Jesus is John, and that John has been raised from the dead. Others say that Elijah has appeared, and still others that one of the prophets from long ago has come back to life. But Herod said, "I beheaded John. Who then is this I hear such things about?" And he tried to see him. So the exact timing of John getting beheaded in relation to when Jesus sent out his disciples is not exactly clear. Reading in Matthew 14, it sounds like when Jesus found out or heard the news that John had been beheaded, it was a direct result. Like, because of that, he wanted to withdraw with his disciples and grieve, I would have to assume, because his cousin just got killed. But if you read in Mark 6, it sounds like Jesus and his disciples had become so popular that they were essentially mobbed and they had to run away from the crowd. Mark 6:30-13, the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all that they had done when they went out and healed and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So either way, Jesus wanted to get away with just his disciples to debrief from the first missionary journey and possibly to also grieve John's death. However, the people followed Jesus in a boat. The people followed Jesus who was in a boat, and the people were either waiting for or very close behind Jesus and his disciples when they got out of the boat. Mark 6, 32 through 34. So when they went away by themselves in the boat to a solitary place. So they went away by themselves to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of them. When Jesus landed and saw the large crowd, he had compassion on them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So he began to teach them many things. Again, the whole reason that Jesus wanted to get away in the first place was so that he could be by himself with his disciples, but still the people followed him and showed up when he was there. And instead of getting frustrated and just like sailing off, or he could just walk on water like he will in just a little bit, he chose to have compassion on them, and he said they are sheep without a shepherd, and he chose to teach them. I would have been pretty irritated, I think, myself, but again, Jesus had compassion on them. The people were spiritually lost and sick, and this was their only hope. Hey, baby girl, what are you doing? And just like that, do we have compassion for those around us who might annoy us or need our help in an inconvenient time? Do we see people as individuals, or do we write them off as they're a crowd and, I just need to get away from this crowd? Go back to mom? There you go. Good job. Continue with the story in John 6, 5 through 13. When Jesus looked up and saw the great cloud coming towards him, he said to Philip, "Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat?" He asked this only as a test for him, for he already had in mind what he was going to do. Philip answered him, "It would take more than half a year's wages to buy enough bread for each one to have a single bite." Another of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, spoke up. "Here's a boy with 5 small barley loaves and 2 small fish. But how far will this go among so many?" Jesus answered, "Have the people sit down." There was plenty of grass in that place, and they sat down. About 5,000 men were there. Jesus then took the loaves, gave thanks, and distributed to those who were seated as much as they wanted. He did the same with the fish. When they had all had enough to eat, he said to his disciple, "Gather the pieces that are left over. Let nothing be wasted." So they gathered them and filled 12 baskets with pieces that were left over. So the way that this is written in John, it really kind of makes what happened here seem sort of underwhelming. Like Jesus just broke off the 5 loaves and then there was enough for 5,000 people. It's just like a sentence there. There's not a whole lot that they go into there, but I'm just imagining what that would look like, or just the amazement of it just continues to come, and he just continues to break off, and there's just food for everyone. That's like us bringing a Little Caesar's pizza here for everybody, and then everybody has 5 slices, and it's all good. It's just crazy. But also, I think this is a parallel for God's love and grace and forgiveness for us. No matter, we might bring just a little bit, our gifts, you want to call them, to God, but he can multiply those more than we can ask or imagine. And he continues to just give us grace no matter how much we choose to live selfishly or sin. So if I were one of the disciples in this situation, I think it would have really annoyed me as well that Jesus asked me, hey, are you going to feed these people now? Not only did the crowd show up out of nowhere, and they weren't really wanted at that time, but they showed up without any food. And now Jesus is asking the disciples, hey, feed them. But again, Jesus had compassion on the people and chose to feed them. He took responsibility for something that was not his problem, similar to what he did for us on the cross. After Jesus fed all the people, they started to get pretty excited. I'm just trying to visualize what that might really look like. But I think that would be a pretty crazy thing to be involved with. John 6:14-15. After the people saw the sign Jesus performed, they began to say, surely this is the prophet who has come into the world. Jesus, knowing that they intended to come and make him king by force, withdrew again to a mountain by himself. So remember that Herod was watching. Jesus is on Herod's radar now again. And if now Herod hears that there's a crowd with 5,000 men that now want to make this Jesus their king, that's probably not going to go over super well. And both Matthew and Mark make note that after this happened, Jesus immediately made the disciples get into the boat and leave without him and disperse the crowd, and stay behind and disperse the crowd himself. Matthew 14:22. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him to the other side. When I first was reading this and studying it, this seemed a bit kind of strange or random. But again, looking at this broader political context, it makes a little bit more sense. With the debate over going of like who Jesus really is and what his purpose is, if the crowd was starting to think that they need to make Jesus their earthly king by force, it was likely that at least some of the disciples had some similar thoughts as well, that saying like, this is going to be our king, this is going to be our military leader. And again, these are the same people that also heard the stories of God bringing the children of Israel out of Egypt, that parted the Red Sea, that used military action to drive people out of the land that they were in. And if the disciples in the crowd were looking for something like that, they could probably see what they wanted to see. And if they wanted to make Jesus a leader, they could see him, the military leader, they could make him into that. And I think so Jesus sending the disciples and the crowd was him diffusing what could have turned into like this 5,000-man militia that showed up and probably had some real military conflict with Rome. Continue on in Matthew 14:22-33. Immediately Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead of him. After he dismissed the crowd, he went up to the mountainside to pray by himself. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage. It is I. Don't be afraid." "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. Then Peter got down out of the boat, walked in the water, and came towards Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink and cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus reached out his hand and caught him. "You of little faith," he said, "why do you doubt?" And they climbed into the boat, and the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." So Peter does something sort of remarkable here. He sees Jesus walking. They think it's a ghost at first. and then he actually chooses to get out of the boat. It's easy to focus on Peter's failure when he got distracted by the wind and the waves, but also he was the only one that got out of the boat and came to Jesus, and tried to get to Jesus. And it worked again until he took his eyes off the winds and the waves that were there. The waves were real and the storm was real, and I have to assume there was real danger there. But none of the storm going on didn't change anything that Jesus was capable of. And how often do we do the same thing, where we step out in faith, and then circumstances in our life, we get second thoughts, or we get pulled away from focusing on Jesus. We have bills, we have medical issues, we have relationship issues. You hear all the stuff happening on the news. All of these are very, very real things. But the moment we take our eyes off of Jesus, we begin to sink. And so the question is not whether the storm is real or not. The question is, what are we going to focus on? What are we going to look at? Jesus sort of rebukes Peter here for his lack of faith, and saying, "You have little faith, why did you doubt?" Peter had seen Jesus calm storms before. They were, not too long ago, they were also in a boat, and Jesus was sleeping, and he calmed the storms when they woke him up. He'd also seen Jesus drive out demons and heal the sick, bring the dead back to life, and just feed 5,000 people with 2 loaves and 2 fish. Peter himself also healed people and drove out demons just soon before. So how much more did he need to see to understand that Jesus was the Son of God and was capable beyond his understanding? But Peter still got distracted by the waves. And again, the same goes for us. How many times has God answered prayers? How many times has he been faithful to us? How many times has he healed people? But oftentimes we will again start to doubt and not keep our faith and our eyes on him. So, wrapping up here, three things I would like to pull out here is have compassion on people even when it's inconvenient for us. Jesus was tired and grieving, and he was probably trying to rest, and he still got out of the boat and served the crowd. Who in your life do you need to get out of the boat for? Bring what you have and trust God with the rest. The boy that had 5 loaves and 2 fish, it wasn't enough, and it wasn't ever going to be enough, but through Jesus, he made it more than enough. Don't wait until you have, what we think is enough to bring your offering to God. God can take it and do more than you can ask or think. And then keep your eyes on Jesus, not on the waves. Don't focus on the crowd. For Jesus, don't focus on the crowd that's trying to make him king. Don't focus on Herod, who is watching from a distance. Jesus knew exactly who he was and where he was going. When we fix our eyes on him, we can also walk on water. When we look away, we will sink. The same Jesus who fed 5,000 with almost nothing, who walked on the water, who reached out and caught Peter mid-sink, that is the same Jesus we follow today. Let's pray.